And this webinar is being hosted by Global Compliance Service, Guyana Inc., your partner for ISO certification and training services. We're indeed happy to have you here this afternoon as we will deliberate on this very interesting topic. So our vision is to be the facilitator of globally certified organizations in Guyana. And that is why we're here. And our mission is to provide a unique opportunity for local businesses to be globally competitive. And we know what globally competitive means. We would like our local businesses to be globally recognized, and also we want to ensure that they can compete both locally and internationally. So we're providing internationally accredited certification services, and also part of our mission is to ensure that our local businesses and professionals are also equipped with the tools so that they can meet those international standards. So today we have a very interesting topic that we will be discussing. Now, the objectives of this webinar is to define, first of all, what is process safety? And I know all of you would want to know, what process safety is about. What is the difference between process safety and what I'm doing within my organization as it relates to safety? We'll tell you what is personnel safety and the difference between the two, process safety and personnel safety. And also, we have the training program on process safety, which is scheduled for July 27th to 30th. And we would also provide with an overview of that training program so that you can have a greater understanding as to what process safety is really about and also how you can implement it within your organization. So we're very happy to have you here with us this afternoon. And before I go any further, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our guests. Well, I'm Candel Bostwick. For those of you who are not acquainted with me, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Global Compliance Service, Guyana Inc., as well as the lead auditor and trainer for Guyana, representing Global Compliance Service. And with a wealth of experience and background in the area of quality, standardization, conformity assessment, and areas along the line of quality and management systems, I'm really happy to share with you my knowledge within the area. And joining me is no one other than Mr. David Pope. Those of you who've been joining our webinars and our sessions, I know he's also no stranger to you. But for those of you who are not acquainted with him, David has over 15 years of experience working in the oil and gas industry. He's also third-party lead auditor for GCS. He's an ISO trainer, certified management system specialist. And with the topic we're discussing today, he actually wrote a book on process safety. So we're really dealing with an expert in the area of process safety, not only by experience of working, but also sharing of knowledge with us, along with his other credentials, as you can see on our screen. So thank you, David. And I know you
Thank you,
have
Candel.
someone else who will join us from your team, Mr. Glenroy London. I don't know if he's on as yet, but we'll also welcome him to this webinar,
I'm
and
not
we
sure,
hope
but
that
if he's not on,
we,
I know he will join soon.
okay. All right. So we're really happy to have you, David, and for all the support that you've been providing to us so that we can educate our local businesses and professionals in Guyana on the content relating to ISO standards and any associated area that will benefit our local industries. So I'll get right into why we're here. We're here to deal with process safety. And if you look at that picture, it really tells you what process safety can help to prevent. And we'll get in depth because this picture really tells us, or it shows us, that there is an explosion happening. And when we look at the explosion, we can only imagine the amount of damage that will result. It can be loss of lives, aquatic life, there can be water pollution, air pollution, and so many more devastating occurrences that can happen as a result of these accidents that can happen within the oil and gas sector in particular. So what is process safety? And by definition, it is termed as a part of safety management. I know some of you may already have your occupational safety and health management system, and you may be wondering, what is process safety? How is it different? But basically, process safety focuses on the concerns of major hazards impacting safety, the environmental damage, and business losses. And I know none of us would like to experience loss to our business. So there are systems we need to put in place to ensure that that does not happen. So David, in addition to this definition, can you explain to the participants what is process safety and how it can affect their operations?
Okay, so thanks, Candel, for that introduction. So I would say process safety is considering safety factors that can impact the process facility that anyone is working in. So um, you usually hear the term occupational safety, occupational health and safety, and everything from that relates to occupational health and safety, 95 to 99% of that deals with people. It deals with having safety systems in place. It can be from management systems, it can be from training, it can be from whatever. And but what occupational safety focuses on is putting systems in place for people. Now, process safety, on the other hand, is focusing on the process failures that might occur to a refinery, a plant, an offshore facility. So, process safety needs to be factored in if you're working in a process environment. So, it 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 actually takes a few years for maybe experience in the oil and gas sector to really understand occupational safety and process safety
Mhm.
and the differences between both.
Okay, thank you. So that's a good explanation for us. I hope we are taking note of that explanation. And you know, when we move from process safety now, we can also look at personal safety. Now, how can we differentiate between the two? Process and personal safety. So, based on the illustration we have before us, when we look at personal safety, we look at how we can protect our employees, right? And then when we look at process safety, it looks more at how we prevent the impact or explosions to the environment and to the business. So just give us a little more detail as to how we can differentiate between the two. If someone is to explain, okay, the difference between these two areas, how can we explain that to them?
Okay, so the difference. So this if we look at the diagram here, the personal safety. Let's take a construction site for example. What you will find happening on a construction site is a lot of incidents, right? Which may result in, let's just say, sprains, cuts, a lot of incidents occurring. And the management system, the culture of a construction environment is built to identify minor incidents and even near misses as something that is normal. You have a construction site with let's say 150 persons, or and it's quite common to have incidents resulting in minor injuries, sprains, cuts. And if we look at the data, what we will see is the numbers are going to be far more near misses, and then it's going to be less minor incidents, less major incidents. And if a construction site has one fatality or maybe two fatalities, there'll be a lot more major incidents and a lot more minor incidents. And at the bottom of the pyramid, there'll be a lot more near misses. Now, in a process facility, in the oil and gas, in the offshore, it is actually reverse, because in a process facility, any minor incident can result in catastrophic failures and can result in multiple fatality. So if we draw a chart and we are trying to create a trend, a normal trend, the statistics and the KPIs that we will set for a construction site is totally different KPIs we will set for a process facility. One incident on a process facility can be multiple fatalities, explosions, multiple deaths. An incident on a construction site may be low impact. So therefore, the safety measures that are put in place from a documentation standpoint, what we look at, what we measure, some of the objectives, how we audit a process facility is different to that of other sectors.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. So I'm hoping that we are now clear as to how the idea of the process safety will help our organization in reducing those accidents. Right? So this diagram also gives us some additional explanation when we look at the occupational safety, right? I know we are familiar with the occupational safety and health management system and what goes into play. For example, when you have such a system in place, it basically provides the environment where your staff are safe, your contractors and so forth are safe. But when we look at the angle of process safety, that takes care of the actual plant or operations, preventing explosions. So in addition to being attired and equipped with a safe environment, process safety basically prevents the accidents from taking place. Anything you would want to add to this, David?
Yeah, so this is a simple visual representation that indicates that process safety focuses on safety for personnel and also health for people. So the personal safety focuses on people from a health perspective and from a safety perspective. The process safety will include personnel at the top, which is the personnel safety, and it focuses on the environment from mostly loss of containment. When we think about process safety, we always use a term and we says process safety is about keeping hydrocarbons in the pipe. If hydrocarbons leave the pipe, then that will result in explosion, that will result in major environmental disasters. Back in 2008, 2009, I was quite fascinated with process safety because I found myself working in an environment where there was heavy process, refineries, upstreams, offshore rigs, and I could have seen the clear differentiation and the mistakes contractors make when they apply the same management system that a company may use for a construction site, and they apply it in a process facility. That has led me to, as you would have indicated prior to, actually write a book, and the book is titled Process Safety Management 19011. That is the international standard for process safety. And that book was published in 2012. That the main basis of that book is to look at two of the major disasters that took place in 2010, the Macondo Deepwater Horizon blowout, which took place in 2010, killing 11 persons. To date, the Macondo blowout is the largest environmental process safety accident we had to date. Another one was the explosion at the Washington Tesoro refinery that also took place in 2010, killing 7 workers. And a lot of the lessons learned from those major environmental accidents led the drive for myself leading the charge in authoring and publishing that book, Understanding, and the title of the book is Understanding the Elements of a Process Safety Management, trying to break down the elements and differentiate, because a lot of the failures were because of not understanding how can we apply process safety, sound process safety management principles in a process environment. A lot of the failures were because of actions, because of trainings, management systems were developed for occupational safety, and trying to use that system in a process environment. And therefore, the process environment is quite unique, and training and management systems, KPIs, accident investigations, audits and inspections need to be tailored for that particular environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David.
I see Glenroy has joined us. Welcome, Mr. London.
Yes, Mr. London, welcome. Yes, I noticed him coming in just now. Mm-hmm. Yes, so there we have the picture as to what personnel safety is and process safety. So we see that personnel safety looks at health and safety. That's the emphasis of that program. Whereas when we introduce process safety, the focus is on safety and the environment. So together, those two systems will complement each other, right? So now we're speaking about process safety. I know many persons may be wondering, why process safety? What type of organizations would this apply to, right? And, is it relevant for my type of organization? I know safety is important to all types of organization, irrespective of the size and the type of operations, but there is greater emphasis on the types of organization that should implement a process safety management system. And we have some examples there. So David, you can share with us those organizations that you think should really focus on implementing process safety because of the level of impact you can have if there are any accidents or disasters within those businesses or organizations.
Okay, yes. So the word process safety is a bit wider than the word industrial or maybe oil and gas, because there are organizations that are construction organizations, but are working in a process environment. So manufacturing organizations transportation, construction industry, electric, oil and gas. We may have some warehousing. We may have logistics, procurement, and supplies, but they are all working and they are interacting within the oil and gas sector. There may be some explosive manufacturers, wholesale trade. So the word process safety is not only for, let's say, upstream organizations working directly. There are organizations on land as well that are working and are interacting with these companies. So I would say that all organizations, and I would say most of the companies in Guyana at this point in time, if they have not yet started to interact with process direct oil and gas offshore, they will very soon understand that occupational safety needs to be modified within your context to include a process environment or a process related scope, right? The American Petroleum Institute, API, in the US saw that many failures resulted in organizations using the OSHA standard, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Standard in the US, and they applied it to a lot of their chemical storage facilities, a lot of their refinery facilities, and therefore in the US and other parts of the world, they started producing specific legislation and specific requirements for process safety facilities and for working in the process environment. So as long as you're in the environment of the process facilities or you're interacting, whether it be upstream or downstream, and when we use the word upstream or downstream, Guyana is in what we will call upstream mode right now. That is the drilling, exploration, taking oil from the ground. And when we use the word downstream, downstream may be a bit further down the road. I'm not sure if it's next year or within the coming years. Downstream is where that oil now is starting to get processed and you're starting to break down that oil and create other facilities on land, other process facilities that can reverse engineer that oil, or could what we call backward integration, could take that crude oil and process it, right? We may use the word refineries, or we can use the word process facilities. So there's the upstream and the downstream, and any interaction within the upstream and the downstream sector will be considered process. And it is very important that we modify our safety management system. We know that there are minimum requirements, and the minimum requirements will call for sound occupational health and safety. Each country has their Occupational Health and Safety Act, their Occupational Health and Safety regulations. Some countries decide to identify that as not as a failure, but identify that there's a missing link. And some companies, the tier one organizations, create their own standard. And the reason why I'm using the word standard, it's because it's up to government regulators to pass legislation and make legislation law. But the persons working in this type of environment should be keen to understand how can my workers, or how can my management system be tailored effectively to work in a process facility. Okay.
Yes, and that is very important, especially with the area of development or level of development that is happening in Guyana. It's important that our local businesses and also practicing professionals like the occupational health and safety managers, that they're aware of the need for having the process safety systems in place. Because we may have many investors and so coming to Guyana to be a part of, let's say, the next stage of development. And we should be aware of these practices so that we can ensure that the persons regulating the sector can ensure that such systems are in place, especially when it comes to protecting our environment in particular, right? So it's very key, and there are many experiences out there where we've seen the devastation that can occur as a result of, not having good systems in place, so we would want to, prevent those things from happening here in Guyana. So in supporting the occupational health and safety management system, I know we're all familiar with the ISO 45001 standard, which is the management system standard to develop an occupational health and safety management system within an organization. Now, if you have that system implemented or thinking of implementing it, right? How does it support that system? So if I'm ISO 45001 compliant, how will process safety now help me in making my system work better? I know there's some 14 elements for process safety management. I don't know if Glenn Roy is going to talk on some of these areas with you, but just to spend a few moments in going through this cycle that we have before us, some of the key areas, so that persons can really understand the elements that make up the process safety system.
Okay, so as long as an organization has an ISO 45001 management system, they will have a baseline management system that would meet the minimum requirements any part of the world that they work in. That is the reason why the ISO management systems are one of the most popular, one of the most advanced management, the most recognized, because this ISO, if someone implements and they are certified to the ISO 45001 standard, they can use that as a baseline to work in any industry, any part of the world. However, there are elements that you will come and improve on your baseline ISO 45001 when working in the oil and gas, when working in the oil and gas sector. So the risk assessment part of this here talks about advanced risk assessments. When we, in an ISO 45001, there's a section for hazard identification and risk assessment, which will focus on the particular job, the task that someone performs, whether it be building scaffold, whether it be road paving. In a process facility, there are advanced risk assessments that needs to be performed. They go by different names. They can be risk assessment for the actual facility itself. It can be what we call a hazard operability study. So the risk assessment process for, if you have a ISO 45001 management system, just needs to be updated to include process hazards, include process safety information within the risk assessment. In the oil and gas sector, we have something we call control of work. And control of work is anything that we put in place to control the risk of executing a particular job. It can be a permit to work system, anything from emergency preparedness and response. We take into consideration the mechanical integrity, any type of pre-startup reviews, method statements, job safety analysis, toolbox talks. All of that form part of your control of work system. So if you're modifying your ISO 45001 management system, you would want to pull elements together to have a control of work system suited to your particular environment. The health and safety management, let's take, for example, the contractors. The contractors that you have working on your behalf in a process environment, they need to be approved and they need to be vetted. They need to have the prerequisite experience. That is also true in a construction or in other industries, but it is critically important if you have contractors working in a process environment. Our incident investigation process needs to change a bit. Like, I'll give you an example. Near misses in a construction industry or in other industries, near misses is something that could have had the potential to cause harm to the environment or injury to personnel. And in those industries, we will document near misses. A minor incident may warrant a certain level of investigation, and a major incident will warrant a higher level of investigation with root cause analysis. That is the norm in all other industries. For process safety management, a near miss, anything minor warrants a full in-depth investigation with a root cause analysis, because the process areas have no room for failure. So we treat our KPIs on the near misses are treated as what we call high potential incidents. There was a high potential for that incident to cause multiple fatalities. Incident investigation process in that environment as well will look at things like process failures, excess flaring, right? If you have excess flaring, then that would warrant an investigation. Something is wrong that is causing the facility to have excess flaring. So that will trigger, there is something in the accident investigation process in your manual, in your procedures, that will trigger certain events to be investigated, right? Compliance audits on the next wheel here, employee involvement and trade secrets. The audits are performed not only on people, but also on the environment and also on the process. We have process safety audits, right? It's not legislative audits. It's not audits for our management systems. It's audits for a process facility about the preventative maintenance, ensuring that the preventative maintenance, that the asset integrity system is being used as it should, right? So the ISO 45001 standard is a solid base for you to build upon and include certain elements that would have your management system be effective in working in a process environment, whether it be onshore or offshore process environments.
Thank you. Thank you for those detailed explanations. Could you touch a bit on trade secrets? I know this is one of the elements within the system. How do we address trade secrets in process management?
Okay, so trade secrets, the name tells itself. There are certain strategies for executing work in a process facility, in a process environment, that would make one contractor more effective than the other contractor. I'm not sure if you ever heard about the methodology called the Kaizen methodology. That came about in the Motorola days, and they use other terms that they call lean, and then they have the lean and they have the Six Sigma. What that is, there are certain trade secrets in the oil and gas sector, in a process facility. There are certain trade secrets that companies would use to execute their work to get more production, and they would execute the work safer in a faster time frame. But those things are trade secrets that that particular company uses. One of the global organizations that is well known for their trade secrets is GE, General Electric. They will execute, they have certain ways that they execute their work in a process environment that that other providers may take. Let's say other providers may take 45 days with 150 employees. They will do it in 20 days with 65 employees. It's a method of how they execute their work. So the oil and gas sector and the petroleum sector, they have certain trade secrets, and each company, each organization will have their trade secrets that they will not reveal. Okay, if you have in Guyana and you have a lot of tier 1 organizations, there are some trade secrets that, let's say, Exxon might have that they might not reveal. That is what makes them competitive on the international market. There are some trade secrets that other large organizations, international organizations, may have, how they perform their work. Why some organizations have a very low accident frequency rate in the oil and gas sector. They have certain trade secrets, certain methods that they apply, certain principles that they apply while working on a process facility that will give them a competitive advantage. So a good management system would have room in it for each company to create their own trade secret, their own method of how they're applying process safety management in the execution of their work.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Yep.
Sure.
So we're almost to the end of the program. I don't know if you want to invite Glenn at this time. Would you want to share with us for 2 minutes your take on process safety and the benefits of implementing such a system within your operations? Is he hearing us? Glenn, are you hearing us?
Yeah, yes, Candel, are you hearing me?
Good afternoon. Yes, we're
Yes.
hearing you.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so good afternoon to each and everyone. Actually, you caught me by surprise there. I was just listening, and I didn't come prepared to articulate on anything specifically. But since you invited me, I probably wouldn't want to be too long. But just to say that process safety is of critical significance, in that there have been many major hazards and incidents that resulted as a result of improper process safety management. And it is important that we manage our temperatures, our flows, our levels, right? Our pressures within the design parameters, because the pipelines and the vessels, whatever, they were designed with certain limitation and constraints. And once we have excursions into the atmosphere, into the environment in an uncontrolled manner, it can definitely be catastrophic, as incidents that have occurred in the past have demonstrated, where there has been damage to the because of excursion into the environment. damage to limbs, to lives, right, to plant and equipment. So the evidence is there to show, what the outcomes can be. So as David mentioned earlier on, it is important that we keep the hydrocarbon, contained within its pipelines, its vessels, etc., etc.
Yep.
Interesting to note, a lot of processes, combine. Output from one is input into the other, and we have devices that regulate and constrain, pressures and temperatures, one system from the next. And it is important, that we have, all the devices that can, contain these pressures and temperatures and flows and levels appropriately. And the operators of these processes have very critical roles to play. So the competence of, of these skilled personnel are critical. And when I say competence here, I don't mean people with 20 years of experience or 1 year experience 20 times. Competence as meaning that people understand their processes and at varying levels of maturity. So you can have, people competent at the basic level, at the intermediate, at the advanced, at the mature, at the expert level. So it's important that you do competence assessments and assurance to make sure that the folks who operate your facilities and your plants have the appropriate competence at the varying levels. And we don't, take that for granted or play that by chance. So competence assessment should be ongoing to make sure that the competence is in place to keep the processes, within, their confinements, be it pipelines or vessels, as the case might be. So I just wanted to harp a little note on the importance of, having the appropriate competence and training and the lessons learned and making sure that the hydrocarbon stays within, the its design components.
Yep.
So for that to be said, since you sort of caught me off guard, I just felt I should mention that, and I pass the floor back on to yourself, David.
Okay, thank you. And a very important point you mentioned there. So you've added to what David would have mentioned before. So it's very important that we are aware of the competence of the operators, right? Because they're the ones who are going to make that system very effective by ensuring that the different controls are in place and that they are effective. So with all of the information that we've shared with you thus far, I'm sure that, that interest is being stirred up within you to know even more about process safety and how you can apply it to your operations, especially if your operation is within the high risk area, right? So I would basically like to ask David now, as you've given me all that information about the program, to tell us a little more, give us a little overview of the process safety course that we have upcoming. We think it's very important for Guyana, for our local businesses to be involved in process safety management and to be aware of the importance of having such a system in place. So David, I'll give you a few minutes to just provide us with an overview of what participants can expect when they attend that training program.
Okay, so on the first day of that training program, we're gonna just cover some of the basics. This training program is going to take into consideration that the attendants may not, some may, but some may not have an idea of sound health and safety principles. So we're going to start off with the first day on discussing the foundations of health and safety and the different elements of health and safety. Nothing to do with process. We're just talking about occupational safety. Under the foundations of occupational safety, we're going to talk about transport safety, fire safety, risk assessments and controls. We're going to talk about the responsibilities for health and safety. We're going to talk about working equipment, things like fall protection, excavation, electrical safety. Those are the things we're going to cover on day one. That is going to give persons introduction, basically introducing them into the concept of safety, health and safety. On day two, we're going to start to introduce the process safety. And we're going to introduce the process safety by identifying some of the hazards and controls that includes things like manual handling, repetitive motion. We're going to discuss the foundations of process safety. Before we go in depth into process safety, we're going to discuss what is the idea of process safety? What are some of the fundamental elements of process safety? Because no matter the evolution of the oil and gas sector, there are certain foundational elements that you must understand. So we're going to discuss that. We're gonna also discuss things like plant integrity, working with hazardous substances, and we're going to discuss something called a system to prevent loss of containment. That is always the goal. That is always one of the objectives from a process safety standpoint. What are some of the systems that we have in place to prevent loss of containment? In day 3, we're going to go down into some of the common hazards and risk associated with the oil and gas sector and with the chemical sector. Day 1, in day 1, we have already covered risk associated with general safety, occupational safety. On day 3, we're going to cover specific hazards and risks and controls that we can put in place for process safety. We're going to also discuss things like plant integrity. When we use the word plant, a plant can be a facility. It can be upstream, it can be downstream. So we're going to discuss plant integrity, right? It can be offshore, it can be onshore. We're going to discuss emergency response, the way how the systems that we put in place for emergency response for a process facility is going to be a little different. The warning signs, the alert systems, the mechanisms that we put in place for emergency response is going to be a bit different. And on the last day, we're going to discuss environmental factors. We're going to discuss something we call the environmental aspect and impact assessment. Environmental aspect and impact assessment is similar to occupational health and safety risk assessment, but it's tailored to the environmental. What type of impact? So we're doing our assessment based on the impact. It's called a environmental impact and aspect assessment. We're going to introduce concepts because that is a large topic unto its own self. We're going to also look at case studies. So for the environmental section, we have a video case study on the Bhopal incident explosion that occurred in 1984, killing 3,800 persons in India, right? That is what we're going to discuss on day 4. We're also going to be looking at some of the case studies from the Macondo Deepwater Horizon blowout that occurred in 2010. We're going to be looking at some of the fundamental flaws which occurred after investigators investigated the Macondo blowout. Some of the flaws, some things that could have prevented that incident, which is the largest environmental incident to date. On day 2, we're going to look at a downstream incident that occurred in the Tesoro refinery in 2010, which killed 7 workers. That is the largest loss of life in a US refinery since 2005. So that has gotten a lot of attention. And those 2 case studies serve as case studies from the upstream sector and also the downstream sector. Another major incident we're going to use to reference through the program is the BP Texas City explosion in 2005, killing 15 persons and injuring 180 persons. It's always good to, when we discussing process safety and we're discussing particular topics surrounding process safety, we attribute and use the real-life case studies so that we understand that these process principles that we are discussing are some of fundamental failures in some of these areas which resulted in multiple fatalities, major catastrophes. We're going to also discuss the Boeing 737 MAX disasters that occurred in 2018 and 2019, because some of the concepts that we're going to be covering in process safety is things that what we term as high reliability organizations. What will make an organization, when they say HRO, high reliability organizations? So the aircraft industry, the aerospace industry, they are seen as high reliability organizations, highly hazardous, but they have an acute management system that we look at them as a high reliability organizations. We're also going to discuss certain concepts like the onus of proof, the culture of denial, which in the investigation in the Boeing 737 MAX disaster in 2018 and 2019. These are concepts, these are incidents and accidents that real life case studies that we can look at and we can take lessons learned from these case studies. We're going to be analyzing them in this training, in this workshop. So delegates can see for themselves the reasoning behind it. These are companies that attempted to put process safety systems in place, and they may have failed at certain points in time, which resulted in multiple fatalities. So it's a very interesting program. It's a workshop style training program, a lot of discussions, a lot of case studies, and you'll be able to take the lessons learned and organization moving forward.
Yes, thank you, David. So there it is. You have a very comprehensive overview of the training program, and we look forward to you registering for that program and also sharing it with your colleagues who you know this program will benefit, because we need our businesses in Guyana to get on board and to implement such systems. So with that, I will open the floor. You know, we have the persons who can attend. We have some examples of persons who can attend who this course will benefit. But I'll open the floor at this point for any questions. Do you have any questions from the information that we would have shared with you throughout this webinar? Please pose your questions to us and we will certainly respond. So just unmute your mic and you can go ahead. Any questions? All right, David, while persons may be thinking of their questions, probably you can highlight some of the persons who this course will be important for. We know we have the occupational safety and health officers or advisors. There'll be those engaged in the operations, right? Those key persons, your technical persons, they will all have a role in process management based on the overview. So I'm looking to see if there is anyone here who has a question. We have a few more minutes remaining.
Candice, Glenroy here.
Yes,
I probably would want to probably introduce something that can probably bring about some articulation. But so when we do have incidents, major, minor, medium, etc., there ought to be some legal ramifications and implications. Do we want to probably touch a bit on, so for example, like in the Macondo incident in BP, what were some of the liabilities and the vicarious liabilities and the implications thereof for probably the BP, the Transoceans, and probably members of the public of the wider society who were pressing for claims, and what were the outcomes? Would this forum be an okay forum to articulate, probably not too lengthy, but to touch a bit on some of those issues?
Well, it may just open the thoughts to think about those matters. And I think here is where we probably deliberate a lot more on it during the training course. So we can say it's a little appetizer.
That's
for
right.
those persons to know when they attend the course, the level of content, and interaction that we'll be dealing with. So they'll actually be fully equipped to address those matters. But for this point, pardon me?
I say, okay, I agreed. I think it was going to add some excitement and some flavor if some of those issues, come up, during the program, and and that folks can debate among themselves, and we can probably fuel the fire a bit. Yeah.
Yep.
I think
that is true.
I think I know why Glenroy asking that, because I know he has been in his position back at BP. I know he will have some insider information on things like that. So I don't know if I could probably just give a little teaser, Glenroy, on some of the things. I know the Macondo blowout, there were a lot of legal ramifications relating to contractor management and the failures with the cement job, and it went back and forth for a while as to blame. Well, who is to blame for this? The largest environmental disaster to date. Who is to blame? Is it BP to blame? Is it the cement job that failed that caused this? So I don't know if you could give us a little teaser, Glenroy, on your information and knowledge.
A 1 minute teaser.
Yeah.
Yes, Glenroy. So you can go ahead. We'll give you 1 minute to give your appetizer, so persons will come on to the course and they'll know what else to look forward to. Because we have a few more minutes before we wrap up. And it's quite an interesting topic. And safety is very important, and more so process safety when we look at the care for the environment. Is Glenroy there?
I think he have his mic on mute, but I'm just going to summarize briefly. In the Macondo blowout, there was the vicarious liability claim because some of the root cause analysis identified that that contractors were used, and one of the failures was a failure in the cement job in the well pipe that caused, that was one of the failures. So there was a legal battle going back and forth as to who is liable. If you want to get more on that case study, you'll need to join the training program and we'll discuss it. We have all the files, we have all the video case studies, and we'll discuss it. So you can identify if legally through contracts that you can transfer liability if you, let's say, executing a contract that involves process and something goes wrong, you'll be able to identify from court of law what they said, because in contract it's one thing between the contractor and the subcontractor, but when these documents and these cases, especially resulting in persons losing their lives, when this reach the court, then we see a different color, something else emerging from the court. So tune in, contact GCS Guyana, and get yourself an early spot, and we'll have some fun discussing and understanding process safety and having a little incident, reflecting on these accidents and everything like that. Okay, Candel?
Okay, so folks, yeah, so I lost some communication there, but David, I said the nail on the head, yes. So we have issues of vicarious liability, and we have issues of the regulatory intervention in terms of Ministry and Mines, and what were the outcome of some of the personnel who had roles to play and who didn't play their roles appropriately, and the outcomes thereof. So it will make for interesting debate and discussions, right, in the actual course. So something to look forward to in attending. Yeah, I know time is of the essence, so I wouldn't want to prolong the discourse.
Okay, thank you, Glenroy. And that brings us to the end of this webinar. I want to thank you, David, for sharing with us, and I want to thank all the participants who would have attended this webinar. We really look forward to your participation and also to you sharing the information about the upcoming process safety course, which is scheduled for July 27th to 30th. You can always contact us at Global Compliance Service for more information for your registration. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you. And we look forward to local businesses in Guyana improving their internal systems so that they can be more efficient. And also, as your local certification body in Guyana, we're here to take you along that journey to be competitive and also to allow you to put the necessary systems in place that will facilitate that process. So thank you for joining us, and do look out for our other sessions that we will have, where we'll be educating you on various issues regarding ISO management system standards, as well as other opportunities where you can better improve your capabilities. Just to give you a quick announcement, we have our ISO 9001 training course scheduled for next week. So if you haven't registered and you're interested, please contact our office for more information. Also, during the month of July, in addition to process safety, we have the ISO 2700 training, which is for management systems consultants and other consultants, a training program that will help you to strengthen your current consultancy program so that you can become more competitive. So keep tuning in to Global Compliance Service. And just remember that we are here to provide your ISO certification and training services here in Guyana. So thank you again until another time. He must be live.